Polygon CDK chain development kit, or how I like to call it as the cult development kit. Right?
I like it.
Yeah. If you were to explain that in the most simple terms, what is it? What does it allow you to do? You have an interop layer. You just talked about that. You have an LY bridge. You have like a prover. If you want to just like map it down in very simple terms.
Yeah. So. The CDK basically allows you to spin up a fast, cheap, secure network in minutes, like literally. Now, are you going to use the version that is spun up in minutes for your application? Most likely not, because you're going to want to like build other things around it. But the point is that it doesn't add that much like overhead from like a time perspective to just spin up your own chain where you control your own environment.
Right.
So that's like at the core is what CDK is. But the thing that's nice about it is you get to like choose what trade-offs you actually want.
Right.
So like in the current version, for example, and it continues to be developed, and all the other chains that use CDK come and contribute to the code base, become one community, grow together. But like as to that, like where we're at right now, like you can choose things, for example, on security trade-offs and cost trade-offs. So you could say, I want to use CDK as a rollup, or I want to use CDK as a Validium. So as a rollup, what you're saying is basically like, I want maximum security. So presumably this would be like an application that is super popular and that has a lot of like economic value in it, saying like, hey, I don't want to like risk things. My users are willing to pay more, but they're going to get a lot of like high security. Essentially, they're getting like Ethereum level security. But then you've got like another set that might say like, hey, my users are not actually keeping a lot of money on here. They're transacting in a few dollars every time. They don't need a lot of security. Like we don't need a lot of security on this chain, but we do need something that's still like very fast and cheap. And given that lower security, if we don't post data to Ethereum and we instead post it to like locally, or we post it to a data availability committee, or we post it to like Celestia or Veil or EigenDA, then in those situations, you're going to get something that's much lower cost, lower security, but it'll be cheaper for your users, right? And so like those are the kind of things that you can like decide with CDK, and there's tons of other things that get like more complex. But ultimately, what teams do is they go and they work with like what we refer to as like implementation providers, and some people refer to them as like roll up as a service providers that ultimately have the expertise with CDK, and they can help these applications just spin it up. They can ultimately run all of the infrastructure that's needed to be run, and the chains don't have to like worry about them themselves. Ultimately, like beyond like that simplicity, we talked about like the aggregator and the aggregation layer there. The other part is like we are building what we refer to as like the staking hub. Effectively, this is going to be a place where, think of like Polygon POS right now, right? It's got a set of validators that validate just like POS. One of the things that we thought about is like, well, what about when all these CDK chains want to decentralize? Or they want to post data somewhere cheap, but they don't want to have it local. Well, the answer is, why don't these validators play another role? Instead of just validating transactions on POS, why don't we let them serve as like a data availability committee for these chains? Whichever validators want to like opt into doing that can do that. Why don't we let them operate sequencers in a decentralized way, provers? And so they end up allowing for like that staking hub is kind of what can give CDK chains the knowledge that like not only will they have interoperability, but they actually have the ability down the road to decentralize the entire chain. That is not really kind of like a prospect in any other ecosystem. So you get like the full benefits of like your monolithic chain, the decentralization, which you could argue is not even needed on CDK, right? Because you think about like censorship resistance, right? So that's something that you can just have like forced transactions to Ethereum in a case of like a roll up. And so you really don't need to like worry about any kind of like decentralization in that case when it comes to censorship resistance. When it comes to things like MEV, like it already exists in a decentralized setting, and like people will be like, yeah, but a centralized sequencer can just choose like what fees to send this and that. Well, that's basically what happens anyway on any other chain. And so From my perspective, like when it comes to like ordering transactions and things like that, it's functionally done in a centralized way already. As validators get paid more, they include what they want to include.
Right.
So that like that doesn't really matter. And so you can go down the list of like why it is that theoretically you don't even need to decentralize a sequencer. But that might be something that they desire to do, and they can using the staking hub kind of once that's created.
Wow, you went in on that. I love
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
answer.